I drove down a deserted highway at night and discovered a terrifying truth waiting in the dark. I never should have opened that door. It was just a drive. Just me, the steering wheel, and endless stretches of black pavement. But the night had a chill that wrapped around me like a fog. The moon was barely a sliver, casting sickly shadows that danced on the shoulder of the road. I was alone. Or so I thought. Just past mile marker 15, something caught my eye. A flicker, a movement not from the wind, but from something lurking in the darkness. My heart pounded. I could hear its whispers. They echoed through the stillness, mingling with the hum of the engine. A low, unsettling sound that made the hairs on my neck stand tall. I pressed on the gas, eyes scanning the sides of the road. Shadows shifted, trees loomed like giants. A shiver skated down my spine. Was it just the cold, or was someone watching me? I let out a shaky breath, but the air was stale, tasting of rusty metal and forgotten secrets. Then a loud thud reverberated from behind my car. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and for a split second, I saw it in outline, blurry and fast, darting into the woods. My hands tightened around the wheel. Something was out there. I could feel it, like hot breath on my neck. As I drove faster, the weight of fear pressed down on me. My heart raced. There were no signs of life, no other cars, no houses, just me and the darkness. The road twisted, bending like a serpent. Every noise amplified. A shuffle of leaves, a faint rustle, the sound of something breathing. My mind played tricks, shadows took form, none of it made sense. Suddenly, the headlights flickered. Darkness swallowed the light, and the engine sputtered. I cursed under my breath, panic clawing at my throat. The car rolled to a halt. In that eerie silence, I heard it again, a cry, a wail that pierced the night. My stomach dropped. I turned the ignition but got nothing. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. Something stepped into the light, a figure cloaked in shadow. My pulse raced, tears stung my eyes. It felt like a nightmare, too real to escape. The figure moved closer, and suddenly the door slammed shut, but I hadn't closed it. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I gasped, fingers trembling as I fumbled with the door handle, but the cold metal wouldn't budge. Something simian was outside, just beyond the threshold, lingering like a predator savoring its prey. The muffled wail echoed through the night again, more desperate this time, clawing at the edges of my sanity. I turned to the rearview mirror, hoping to catch a glimpse of the figure darting away in the shadows, but all I saw was the dark expanse of the road stretching behind me. A chill raced down my spine as the shadows began to deepen, curling like smoke. Each second felt like an eternity, and in that suffocating silence, I could hear the faint scuttling like nails scraping against the pavement. The headlights flickered ominously, illuminating a swath of the road, revealing a twisted figure with contorted limbs lurched just outside the glow. Its face was obscured, but I could sense its gaze boring into me, a tangible malice that sent shivers rocketing through my bones. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing for the nightmare to end, but the feeling of eyes upon me only intensified. When I dared to open them again, it was gone. But I was no longer alone. The back seat, once empty, now held a new presence. A blurred shape materialized, an indistinct figure draped in shadow with hollowed eyes that glinted like shards of glass. I froze, paralyzed by a gripping fear, as the stench of decay seeped into the car, overwhelming my senses. Without thinking, I lunged for the handle again, throwing my weight against the door, but it remained sealed. The figure in the back moved closer, its breath labored, scraping the air with a sound that struck deep in my gut, a sickening imitation of laughter that echoed in my skull. I knew I had to escape. I pounded my fists against the wheel, desperation surging through me. The silence shattered momentarily as the engine coughed back to life, sputtering against my frantic pounding. I pressed on the accelerator, believing I could outrun whatever horrors clung to my path. But the car jerked violently, struggling against an unseen force, as if chains tethered it to the spot. The figure shifted again, inching forward, revealing a face of grotesque features twisted in a macabre grin. I recoiled, pressing against my seat. Terror surged as I heard words form in the murky depths of silence, a voice as ancient as the night itself. "You shouldn't have come here," it rasped, the tones entwined with laughter that made my skin crawl. Suddenly, the headlights began to flicker again, plunging me into darkness. I was suffocated by shadows as the car trembled, the figure now looming closer, its breath chilling my soul. My hands trembled as I twisted the keys again, heart racing with each futile attempt to escape. And just then, a deafening thud echoed against the trunk, reverberating like a death knell, and then silenced as I peered into the rearview mirror once more, praying for clarity. All I could see was the shape morphing into something larger, something more menacing, looming ever closer in the darkness. The light finally returned, only it illuminated a stark reality. The darkness where there had once been nothing had transformed into a mass of eyes, thousands of them, glinting with unholy hunger, staring back at me from the tree-lean. I gasped. What had I stumbled into? My breath quickened as I fought against the urge to scream. The back door began to shake as if assaulted by invisible hands. A high, keening wail erupted from the shadows, sending tremors through me. The figure beckoned, vanishing once again, leaving no trace except for the lingering dread in the pit of my stomach. In that moment of terrifying realization, I understood something darker than the night itself. I wasn't alone on this road, and there was nowhere to run. Before I could grasp the gravity of this existence, everything froze. Then came the sound, an unmistakable creak of my door handles slowly turning, just as the world around me collapsed into chaos. I felt a cold hand touch my shoulder, and I turned, only to find myself staring into the hollow, smiling face of the thing, what I had only glimpsed through the shadows. "I've been waiting," it whispered. The car jolted violently, and the headlights went dark once more, engulfing me in a shroud of inky blackness. Then I heard the whispers return, rising to a fever pitch around me, as the voices enveloped my reality, drowning my screams in a cacophony of madness. With a final chilling gaze, the world faded into nothingness. I blinked against the pitch-black void, the sensation of weightlessness tugging at my senses. The sensation of being unanchored sent a fresh wave of panic flooding my veins. Had I lost consciousness? Was I still in the car? The stench of decay hung in the air, thick and suffocating, wrapping around me like a funeral shroud. Suddenly, there was a momentary flicker of light illuminating my surroundings. I was no longer in the car. My body lay crumpled on the cold asphalt of the deserted highway, the once soft hum of the wheels now replaced with a deafening silence. I struggled to push myself up but felt something heavy pinning me down. With great effort, I turned to see what weighed down my chest, a shadowy figure, half-formed yet distinctly human, dissolved into the ground. But before I could fully comprehend it, the shadows coiled around me, a visceral flurry of cold fingers brushing against my skin. I shot to my feet, heart pounding wildly, as the oppressive darkness tightened its grip. With the fleeting glow of the previous flicker, I saw stretches of empty road disappearing into the black canvas beyond, a road that felt like a bottomless pit, stretching onward endlessly. Then, in the distance, an echo. A familiar wail, a heartbreaking cry that clawed at something deep inside me, clawing for release. I turned my head toward the sound, instinct driving me forward, when I glimpsed shadows shifting, amorphous shapes gathering in the depths of the trees lining the highway. They waited, watchers lurking just beyond the veil, eyes glistening like shards of ice, drinking in my fear. This time, the absence of the car didn't offer me the illusion of safety. There I was, stripped bare, exposed to whatever horrors these woods concealed. The air grew thick with foreboding, and every step I took into the dark brush felt agonizingly heavy. The wail intensified, its sorrow seeping deeper into my bones, and snaring my heart like a vice. I stumbled, caught in the grip of a night shrouded in dread. As the shadows thickened, I heard soft whispers crawling through the air, tendrils of noise brushing against my ears, weaving together a sinister lullaby. You shouldn't have come here, the whispers harmonized, their tones dripping with malice. Straining to fend off the encroaching hysteria, I pressed on. Please, stop. Just show me. I cried into the darkness. Silence for a moment, a deceptive stillness that wrapped around me with maternal intent. And then, with the suddenness of lightning cutting through a storm, the shadows writhed and coalesced into a figure, its features forming, twisting grotesquely, until it stood before me, an echo of the thing I had seen in the car. It smiled, lips curling back to show rotting teeth, as if my horror was its sweetest treat. The truth waits for those who seek it, it hissed, taunting me, revealing something more than hatred beneath its grin. Are you ready to listen? I clutched my head in agony, trying to block out the unholy sound echoing inside my skull. The shadows twisted tighter, gathering around my ankles, dragging me toward the sinister glow that pulsed ahead. Relentlessly, I pulled back, but I was met with an invisible wall, the darkness lunging at me with renewed ferocity. Come, come, the figure urged, gesturing with long, clawed fingers, which began to dissolve into thick smoke. Come, and witness the heart of this night. Witness what lies beneath the surface of your reality. Like a moth drawn to a flame, I felt my feet moving against my will, sliding closer to the light. I was torn, caught between terror and an insatiable need for truth. Whatever lay within that glow promised to shatter the fragile remnants of sanity I clung to. Yet, deep down, I knew, once I crossed that threshold, there'd be no turning back. With a guttural scream, I broke free from the grasp of the shadows, sprinting for the long stretch of asphalt, desperate to escape the grotesque visions that threatened to consume me. I ran until the wails blurred into a haunting chorus behind me. But then, ahead, the road began to rip open an abyss. Splitting the very ground, as if the earth itself had decided to swallow me whole. I stumbled, teetering on the edge as the figure stood watching, too still in the chaos. It raised a finger, drawing a line in the air, silencing the wails, and with chilling calm, it said, "Step forward, and you will never feel the pain of the mundane again." A thunderous roar shook the night, and the shadows clamored as the earth trembled and the dark void ahead beckoned me with insidious allure. I halted, breathless, torn between my survival instinct and a grisly curiosity that threatened to unravel me. And then came a voice, a second, clearer one, joining the whispers in the dark, soft yet filled with sorrow. "Help us," it wept. "We can't escape." And as the ground beneath me cracked wider, I knew I stood at the edge of a terrifying truth, teetering on the brink of my worst nightmare. With the fissure yawning wide before me, confusion and dread wrestled for control in my mind. The shadows danced along the edges, their movements quick and chaotic, while the night echoed with a chorus of desperate voices bound by anguish. "Help us," they cried, a symphony of torment vying for my attention, compelling me to lean closer. Each heartbeat rattled like a drum, an incessant reminder of the fragility of my existence against this sinister backdrop. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, hoping my voice would drown out their torment. Silence fell like a suffocating weight, and for a moment, I wondered if the shadows had withdrawn, but they hadn't. They surged, swirling around me, seeping through every crevice, their cold touch igniting the fear within. "You will know us," the figure intoned softly, its voice now resonating with a hypnotic pull, twisting around my senses. "Your action, your choice will bind us." I fought against the paralyzing grasp of terror, my mind frantically searching for stability. In a blind search for clarity, I turned my gaze back to the glow emanating from the cleft in the ground, pulsating rhythmically like a dying heartbeat. It beckoned me closer, tempting, luring, promising clarity and understanding, and then, without warning, the whispers surged again, louder this time, overwhelming the air until I felt an almost physical force pushing against me. "You are the bridge," echoed through the relentless wail. "You can set us free," as they cried out, visions began to flash before my eyes, fragments of memories, distorted and jagged, flickering like a broken film reel. Images of people trapped in endless cycles of suffering, their expressions frozen in panic and desperation, each face reflected back, yet familiar and strange. I gasped, stumbling backward, grappling with an urgent feeling. They knew me, those lost souls. They had been waiting for me. Look closer, the creature breathed, stepping effortlessly toward the void, its grotesque smile expanding. They are not your imagination, they are your regrets, your shadows. With each passing moment, the truth grew colder and sharper, slicing through the fog, clouding my thoughts. Tremors of recognition stirred within me. I stumbled upon the faces, not just figments of my mind but fragments of those I had abandoned. Friends long gone, lost to time, guilt, or perhaps my own neglect. No. This can't be, I gasped, clutching my head as nausea swirled in my gut. I've done everything I could. Everything? The figure interrupted, its tone dripping with mockery. And yet you steered clear of the truth. Now, you can return to the light, or remain in the dark with them. Choose. My heart pounded wildly. Cold sweat dripped down my spine as I wavered at the precipice. The cries intensified, the shadows burgeoned around me, as if trying to pull me into their void, merging my essence with theirs. Help us! They begged repeatedly, desperation igniting fear into a roaring inferno within me. Why? Why do you want me? I yelled, caught in the turmoil of the moment. Join us, they all chorused. Only then will you find the power to shape your destiny. Belong. Their pleas carved into my soul, and I trembled, knees buckling as the abyss widened below. In that infinite space, I glimpsed something sinister, a darkness so profound it eroded the very essence of hope. I hesitated, wavering on the edge of acceptance, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The realization that crossing that void might shatter whatever tenuous grip I had on my reality settled heavily upon my chest, and then, amidst the cacophony, serenity broke through, a whisper from somewhere, softer than the rest yet undeniably present. Do not listen to them. There is still time to choose differently. Remember them not only for their cries but for their love. The entity's grin warped into a snarl as if a light had flickered in my mind. I felt their hold weakening, the shadows hesitating. But just as clarity paved its way through, the abyss erupted with a fury. The ground shook violently as spectral hands erupted from the void, reaching for me with jealousy-fueled rage. No. I screamed, fighting against its pull, feeling the world looming on the brink of irrevocable descent. In an instant, the shadows clawed back, wrestling for dominion over my sanity as the silhouettes vanished and the whispers turned into a deafening roar, culminating in a final anguished cry. Suddenly, the fissure collapsed around me, lurching violently and swallowing the light hold. My heart raced as I lost my footing and plunged into the darkness, falling endlessly. But right before I could disappear entirely, a vision of a silhouette shot past me, a fleeting echo of hope intertwined with despair. Find us, it whispered, their last plea reverberating in the depths of my soul, and just like that, as the abyss closed around me, I felt cold fingers grasp at my throat from the void, pulling me deeper as both darkness and light battled for my fate. The air was thick with the stench of decay as I tumbled into the depths, the unearthly grip around my throat ebbing only for a moment before tightening again, suffocating my cries. I clawed at the darkness, desperately seeking anything, any semblance of truth or escape, but instead, freezing fingers interlaced with my limbs, dragging me deeper into the unknown. Suddenly, the coldness melted into a churning wave of heat as if I had plunged into boiling liquid. The darkness transformed into an oppressive twilight, a twilight saturated with the sounds of whispering chaos. I landed hard on a surface that felt like bone, slick with an unknown substance. Groaning, I tried to rise, but the dense air felt heavy, as though it were filled with invisible shards of glass that cut into my skin, spreading pain like wildfire. My heart thudded in my chest, echoing the disturbing pulsations that filled the shadows. Panic clawed at me as I scrambled to my feet, vision blurring as I searched for an exit. My feet squelched against the informed ground, sending sprays of putrid liquid up my legs. I barely held back bile, petrified that any moment I'd convulse into the very essence of this nightmare. "Find us," I muttered, choking on the words like shards of glass stuck in my throat. My mind, frantically piecing together the vision of the silhouette, clung to hope even as the eerie environment turned against me, wrapping around me like a living shroud. Before I could catch my breath, the whispers returned, horrific sounds melding together, a tapestry of heart-rending sorrows and torment. In the quaking shadows, figures began to materialize, their twisted forms dancing in a macabre celebration of sorrow. Their faces were shrouded in darkness, but their eyes glowed with desperation, countless gazes washing over me. It was an ageless despair, an echo of every regret I had ever harbored. Suddenly, one spirit broke from the swirling Masa woman with hollow cheeks and empty eyes, her lips peeling with every word she spoke. "You cannot escape them. You cannot escape yourself." Her voice cracked like shattered glass, filling my veins with icy dread. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, backing away as their collective despair started to reach for me, fingers skeletally elongated, and longing for companionship in their eternal gloom. "Only your memory, your essence. None can ever forget you, naught can ever forgive," she rasped. The air thickened around her, an electric hum that quickened my pulse. "You have left us behind. You know our fates, yet you forge ahead, blind to our needs. No. I wanted to help. My voice choked off as the shadows wrung tighter around my neck, cutting me off mid-sentence. "Help?" Another figure sneered, this one a man whose face was a patchwork of anguish. "You abandoned us in our darkest hour when we needed you most. You chose to forget, and now your past comes to claim you. As their collective sigh danced in the air, I felt the cracks within me widening, memories rushing forth, fragments of my past that I had buried beneath a mountain of shame. I didn't just neglect them, I had turned my back, convinced that burying the past would save me a life of guilt. And now, they were here, not just the dead but the remnants of my own failures. Driven by despair, the shadows churned, the memory of their cries tightening like a vice around my heart. The ground began to tremble violently. I could feel the enormity of their grief rising up like a tidal wave, threatening to engulf me entirely. "Join us, become part of this cycle," they shrieked. "Your pain will be soothed in the embrace of others." No. I roared, fighting against the tide, forcing my feet against the slick ground. But their cries intertwined with mine, enveloping the space until I was drowning in an ocean of grief, swirling ever tighter, endlessly deeper. Just as I thought I would be swallowed whole, a voice rose above the rest, piercing through the chaos. "You are more than this. Remember." It was the silhouette, the flickering reminder of hope. "Your choices can breach the limits," the shadows convulsed. Their forms bombarding me like shrapnel, urging me to drown in the weight of my own remorse. But as I reached deep within, I suddenly remembered, light. I could reach for it, pull it into existence against the shadowy tide. I wasn't alone, they had been fragments of me, yes, but also remnants yearning for redemption. With newfound resolve, I locked my eyes, my soul upon the faint glimmer of hope that flickered somewhere nestled in the shadows. As I gathered my strength to fight back, the shadows howled in fury, retreating slightly as if my determination had single-handedly disrupted their dark equilibrium. But amidst the chaos, an unbearable pressure surged through the air, a sinister vibration that echoed the cries of the forsaken. The ground quaked beneath me, and out of the shadows emerged a grotesque figure, larger than any before. It bore a mask of twisted, anguished faces, the collective pain and fury of those I had lost gravitating toward me, and in its mouth was a ravenous maw that opened wide enough to consume my very essence. As it lunged for me, the world split like a shattered mirror, and I felt the shards of despair carrying me in different directions, each path a door to a different horror. With a scream lodged in my throat, I whispered, "What are you?" The grotesque form hesitated, and I could hear a raspy voice slither forth in response, deceptively soft yet echoing with malice, "I am the consequence of abandonment, and your fate is tied to all who dwell here. Choose wisely before the darkness consumes you." In that terrifying moment, as the abyss around me quaked and split apart, I was forced to decide. Would I claw my way free, embracing the possibility of redemption, or succumb to the endless cycle of regret that threatened to ensnare me forever? Before I could answer, the ground ruptured beneath my feet, spiraling open like a monstrous mouth. The last thing I saw was the flickering silhouette thrusting forward to shield me, before the ground gave way entirely, plunging me into the yawning void of new horrors waiting to be awakened. The descent was like plummeting into hell itself. A cacophony of screams and whispers surrounded me as I fell into the chasm. The world blurred into a spiral of darkness, punctuated only by flashes of grotesque images, faces twisted in agony, shadows clawing at the edges of my vision, desperate to pull me into their eternal torment. Gravity shifted unexpectedly, and suddenly I hit the ground, a jarring impact that rattled my bones. I gasped. The air was stale and heavy with the scent of wet earth. Was I underground? As I tried to rise, the darkness began to swirl around me, coalescing into a fog so thick I could barely see my own hands. Panic clawed at my throat again. This dense veil seemed to harbor the very weight of despair. "Help," I croaked, the word barely a whisper, fearing even the shadows might turn it against me. There came a rustle in the fog, and a figure stepped forth. A child, no more than 7, with ashen skin that glowed faintly in the dark, stepped into view. But her features were twisted with sorrow, and her wide eyes glimmered with tears that never fell. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered, her voice frail yet resonating with the weight of countless burdens. "Where am I?" I stammered, trying to maintain a semblance of bravery. "What is this place?" "This is where memories go to die, where souls linger, never finding peace." She glanced back into the swirling dark like she could see something lurking beyond my comprehension. "You have to help us," she implored, taking a step closer. "Help you? How?" But before the child could respond, a surge of shadow materialized behind her. A grotesque form, with long, scourged limbs that extended like shards of dark wood, erupted from the fog. It had no face, only a swirling vortex of agony. The child gasped and stumbled back, clinging to my arm in fear. "Run!" I screamed, instinctively pulling her behind me. We turned to flee, but the tendrils of shadow crackled to life, snaking around us with unnatural speed, suffocating the air with their venomous haze. "We can't escape," the child whimpered, her eyes wide with a terror so profound that it was infectious. "It feeds on our fear." As its tendrils twisted and writhed, I felt the pulse of despair swirl through the air, a sickening reminder that these horrors were drawn from my own memories. I was the architect of this prison, and the child was merely a reflection of the innocence I had abandoned. Desperation erupted within me. "No! There has to be a way out!" I yelled. But as I did, the shadows thickened, swirling around us in a frenzy. Suddenly, I saw light, barely a flicker but bright compared to the suffocating gloom. "This way!" I shouted, instinctively grasping the child's hand and dragging her toward it. Our feet sank into the ground, but I pushed forward, desperate to escape the suffocating grasp of the abyss. As we neared the light, another figure emerged, a tall, dark silhouette that loomed at the threshold, mouth twisted into a grin that did not reach its sunken eyes. "You can't leave yet," it hissed, the very sound scraping at my sanity. "You haven't given enough. What do you want?" I screamed, my voice cracking. I felt the child's grip slipping, the shadows clawing at her. "No!" The apparition drew closer, and as it did, the light began to dim, pulsating, threatening to extinguish. "You must surrender what you hold dear," it intoned, each word steeped in grim finality. "What will you sacrifice to break free?" The child quivered beside me, her light dimming, and I felt the impossible weight of my past pressing down on me, a montage of moments I had tried to forget, friends abandoned, loved ones forsaken. "Take me," I breathed, recognizing the truth that crushed my heart. "Let her go, take me instead," but before I could process my own folly, the figure lashed out, tendrils snaking around the child, pulling her away from me. "You have chosen," it hissed, laughter echoing in the darkness, reveling in my despair. No. I lunged forward, but the darkness was insatiable. It engulfed her scream as she vanished behind the veil of shadows. I was left facing the embodiment of my failure, the horrible truth of my own cowardice crystallizing into dreadful clarity. With a heart pounding like a drumbeat of reckoning, I realized my fight had just begun. The shadows began to shift again, the air thickening with the sounds of hundreds, not thousands of whispers crying out, "Remember then." In a heartbeat, the grip around my throat returned weighty and suffocating as a familiar voice echoed, wrenching my heart anew. It was chillingly tender, laced with the anguish of betrayal. "You left me. Now you will know the price of abandonment." Before I could fully comprehend what was happening, tendrils enveloped me, spinning me away from the remnants of hope toward an unknown fate waiting in the depths. As everything dissolved into darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The last words I heard before everything faded away were a piercing echo, "Now, face the memories you thought buried forever." The endless blackness choking my vision began to shift, colors bubbling up in slow, sickly waves like the aftermath of a nightmare receding. I found myself lying on a hard surface, one that vibrated beneath me, as if the ground itself were alive. I opened my eyes to the suffocating grip of darkness easing, and around me, ghostly phantoms flickered in and out of view, their faces contorted in anguish. Panicking, I tried to rise, but a strange energy rooted me in place. "Not yet," a voice whispered, cold and menacing. I turned to see a man standing at the edge of the light that had broken through the shadows. He was dressed in tattered clothes that draped over him like shrouds, his visage etched with despair, a mirror of my own heart. "Who are you?" I croaked, dread pooling in my gut as he stepped forward, illuminating the remnants of those wisps of lost souls around me. They whirled like autumn leaves caught in a relentless storm, reaching out, fingers clutching at the air, crying silently for relief. "I am the keeper of the lost," he said, and his pale eyes bore into mine with a depth of sorrow I could scarcely comprehend. "You've awakened the echoes of your past. Those you abandoned will seek you out." I felt an icy grip of recognition clutch at my heart. The memories I had fled for so long now surged forth, friends left behind, a sister lost in a tide of tears, a father's final breath, each moment a fresh wound that bled the essence of my soul. "What do you want?" I gasped, my voice trembling as the air grew thick with sorrow. The shadows began to swirl again, forming grotesque shapes of my own recollections, depicting the betrayal in vivid, agonizing detail. "The cost," the keeper murmured, "is all that you have refused to confront." With a slow motion, he extended his hand, a flicker of light alighting upon it, illuminating fragments of my old life, laughter shared over campfires, hands held under a starlit sky, and soft whispers haunting my dreams. "What must I do?" I demanded, feeling the weight of their spectral presence pressing down upon me like a shroud. "Face them," he replied, the shadows behind him writhing as if eager to claw at me once again. "They await your confession, your penance. In recognizing the pain you caused, you may yet find a way to break the chains binding you." But in that very instant, the voices of the lost began to rise, a discordant symphony enveloping me in a storm of wrath and mourning. "You abandoned us," they shrieked. "You left us to rot." I clawed at the ground in desperation, yearning to escape the deluge of memories crashing against me. At the core of every anguished visage, I recognized the faces of those I once cherished, and with each name they cried, my spirit sank lower. "No. I didn't mean to what?" They mocked, their whispering changed, flickering into a cacophony that echoed through the shadows. "To forget? To forsake us? You thought you could outrun the past." I felt the keeper watching me intently, as if evaluating my despair. A flicker of hope illuminated my mind. "I want to face it. I'll confront everything if it means saving them, saving myself." With a sharp intake of breath, the keeper nodded solemnly. "So be it. Your reckoning begins now." The horizon cracked open as a dazzling light shot through the shadows, and the air thinned, leaving only the electric hum of anticipation. It felt as though the world was folding upon itself, plunging me into a vortex of existence unraveling. As the darkness swirled, the light engulfed me. Suddenly, I was cast into moments I had buried deep and locked away with meticulous care. Vivid images assaulted my senses. I saw my sister, no older than the child, curled up alone in a dark room, tears rolling down her cheeks, pleading with the shadows to release her. I saw my father's weary face, a mixture of disappointment and longing as he stood at the door I had closed behind me, forever silenced. I screamed, falling to my knees in the middle of the memory. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Then, from within the folds of the memory, a new presence erupted, a figure that merged with the shadows and light. It was my sister, her face twisted not just in sadness but now in rage. You think it's enough to say sorry? She hissed, her weighty gaze piercing through my heart. You don't get to forget us just because you wish it away. The darkness won't be easily dissuaded. The keeper's voice echoed around me, an ominous reminder that turning back wouldn't be an option. The past cannot remain buried if you wish to find peace, yet, in that moment, I felt a tremor, an earthquake of choice trembling through my core as her figure loomed closer, ready to consume me whole. Her scream pierced through the layers of despair, binding my fate forever to the echoes of my failures. Face it all, or I will claim you, she snarled, her voice weaving through my mind like a tightening noose. And as I gazed into her sorrowful eyes, an unbearable truth began to surface. The shadows swarmed, binding me, forcing me to confront not just those memories, but also the fact that I might never escape the consequences of my own existence. I was at the crossroads of salvation and damnation, and time was running out as the shadows whispering around me grew impatient, but just as the darkness pulsed its demand, a deafening crack sounded, shattering the memory. I was propelled into another memory, one that I couldn't quite place, yet its intensity rattled my fragile resolve. Someone's coming, a voice brushed my ear, barely audible through the chaos that I turned, and through the obliterating shadows, a flicker of a figure emerged, and I knew instantly it would either save me, or destroy me completely. The flickering figure coalesced into view, the harsh light casting jagged shadows that danced grotesquely around us. My heart hammered in my chest, the rhythm quickening with the inexorable dread tightening its grip on my throat. Who was this new player in my twisted tableau of guilt and regret? As the silhouette drew closer, the air around me thickened with a sense of foreboding. It was a woman, her features shrouded and dim, but there was something hauntingly familiar about her cadence, as if I had known her once, long before the shadows of my past had begun their relentless pursuit. "Help me," she murmured, her voice low but filled with urgency. The sound slithered through the grasp of the darkness, wrapping around me like a thin thread of desperation. "Who are you?" I managed to say, my voice quaking in the unyielding tension. "Are you real, or are you just another echo of my failures?" Her laughter, a soft yet frigid sound, erupted in the charged air between us, and I felt as though I were being subjected to a cruel illusion. "I'm very real, and so are the consequences that come with ignoring your past. You seek to confront it, but sometimes it fights back." The keeper's voice lingered in my mind, urging me to take a leap into the turmoil of reconciliation. I have to. Her expression hardened, and an icy gaze enveloped me. "No. You have to turn back. You don't understand." But it was too late. The shadows began to writhe more violently, the figures of my lost loved ones contorting and merging with her presence. My sister's scream echoed louder, forcing me to the ground as their collective anguish swirled around me like a tempest. Confusion splashed over me, the echoed voices screaming in a harmonious chant of blame, a symphony of despair. "Look deeper, see what you've done," they cried, their faces merging into one grotesque mask of pain, madness flickering in every feature. Amid this chaos, the strange woman reached out, her hand brushing against my cheek. "You still don't understand what's at stake," she whispered, locking eyes with me. "The shadows crave your anguish, that's how they feed. They want you to confess, but confessing means acknowledging that which you fear most. But I have to face it. I must do this," I shouted, defiance burning in my words. As if responding to my resolve, the shadows recoiled, an unnatural howl vibrating in the ground beneath me. The woman's expression softened for a fleeting moment, desperation lighting her eyes. "You're not ready. If you want to confront them, you need to know the truth before they devour you whole." Her warning was swallowed by the chaos, the cacophony shutting her out, amplifying the shadows' cries. "You left us. You abandoned us to rot in the darkness." Suddenly, a new face broke through the layers of ghosts. My father, his form more ethereal yet powerful, towering above like a bastion against the night. His heart-wrenching gaze locked with mine, a multitude of unsaid words hanging, suffocating in the air. "Why? he asked, the single word puncturing the storm raging within me. Why could you not stay? Tears threatened to spill from my eyes, but fear layered over grief, binding me in place as the memories swirled faster, more violently with each revelation. Suddenly, I felt as though I was being pulled deeper into the vital darkness of introspection, a chasm of reckoning that bore down on my spirit. Just then, the woman seized my shoulders, her grip icy yet filled with urgency. Listen. This place this night is a conduit. If you dive into that memory again, if you claim it wholly. She hesitated, looking up as a shadow darted toward us, dark tendrils reaching out, hungry and insatiable. My father's form began to flicker, wavering like a flame caught in a tempest, while the wrath of the shadows grew, the cacophony amplifying, a shrill anthem of sorrow clashing against itself. You'll be trapped. The woman shouted, urgency cracking her voice. You must choose before the darkness wraps its web around you. And just as my heart teetered on the edge of resolution, the shadows lunged forward, engulfing the woman entirely. She disappeared with a gasp, only to be replaced by another phantom of regret. It was my childhood friend, her face twisted in despair, echoing the anguish of 5 lonely years spent unacknowledged. Not this time, she hissed, and the shadows surged, drawing nearer, so thick I could hardly breathe as my pleas echoed into the abyss. I was teetering on the brink, the line between salvation and entrapment blurring before my very eyes. Behind me, a brilliant light flickered more vibrant than the darkness surrounding me. With the shadows clawing at my heels, I sensed my moment had arrived. By confronting this last memory, I could either tear through the curtain of oblivion or be ensnared within its grasp forever. As I took a step forward, the darkness surged around me, the palpable energy spiraling to pull me deeper into madness. But in that moment of clarity, I could almost hear the whispers of the Keeper, urging me to remember, and just as I felt the ground beneath me start to sway with the tumultuous forces, the shadows screamed in unison, take the leap, and he will pay the price. A bottomless void opened before me, and in one shuddering breath, I leaned into the abyss, the scream of despair mingling with my own as time shattered like glass. With one last glance over my shoulder toward the eyes gazing longingly through the void, I drowned into the very heart of darkness and let out an anguished cry. The shadows swallowed me whole, but within their depths, I knew, lay the terrifying truth I had tried to outrun. And whether I would emerge as a savior or a victim remained a perilous question hanging in the stifling air. The void engulfed me, an oppressive weight that sank into every fiber of my being. I plunged deeper into the darkness, swirling shadows enveloping my form like a shroud, each whispering tendril carried with it the scent of earth and decay. They clawed at my skin, but I felt no pain, only a crushing yearning, a desperate need to uncover the truth that had been hidden beneath layers of torment and denial. Visions flickered to life in the abyss around me, vivid scenes of moments I desperately wished forgotten. I saw my sister with sunlit hair, laughing as we played in the yard, her joy polar opposite to the anguish that now echoed around me. The warmth of those memories mingled with the chill of the dark, creating a horrific amalgam that threatened to tear me apart. Remember, a voice whispered, threading through the cacophony. Remember what you did. But before I could formulate a response, the landscape shifted abruptly. I stood now in the dilapidated hallway of an old house, a place I recognized but could scarcely bear to see. Motes of dust hung in the air, illuminated by the ghostly light filtering through broken windows. The walls were cracked, their peeling paint revealing the remnants of a life once vibrant, now consumed by rot. It was here, I knew, where the web of my past had spun its darkest secrets. Memories flashed, vivid and tormenting, the arguments that had spiraled into silence, the fear-laden words left unspoken. Voices began to swell around me. You left us. You forgot, they echoed, fragments of every moment where I had chosen indifference over connection, selfishness over love. Stop. I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the din of accusations. The temperature plummeted, and the air turned dense like molasses. A figure emerged in the corridor, its presence suffocating. My childhood friend stood there, her eyes glaring with an intensity that pierced through the heavy fog. You think you can erase me? She hissed, her silhouette twisting against the wall like a reflection caught in a funhouse mirror. You think you can flee? This is the consequence of your abandonment. Images erupted around user shared laughter, the agony of betrayal when I turned my back on her in a moment of need. Each replay sent jolts of pain coursing through my veins as the truth carved its mark. I had failed her, and the guilt was a festering wound that refused to close. Suddenly, the walls trembled, and shadows morphed into grasping hands, reaching for me with the hunger of the forgotten. No. I shrieked, stepping back, only to find more figures surfacing, the collective souls of those I had turned away swirling about in a grotesque cacophony of grief and fury. Help us! Their voices intertwined, a symphony of heartache that drowned out my own thoughts. You can't just walk away. The walls of the corridor began to pulse, flesh-like and alive under the weight of their emotional onslaught. I felt as if the very structure around me was a body, quaking under the burden of my sins. A new apparition appeared. A malevolent smirk crossed the face of a faceless beast, echoing my doubts. Will you confess, or will you let them suffer alone? It sneered, eyes swirling like bottomless pits of despair. In an instinctual rush, I lunged for the shadows, grappling with memories. My hands sank into the darkness, seeking something tangible to ground myself, a tether to salvation or despair, I could not tell which. As I thrashed, I felt the dampness of tears mix with cold sweat on my brow, my heart racing against the inevitable doom. No one can hear you here, the beast laughed, an echo that struck at the very core of my being. You think this is just a memory? This is your worst nightmare. It is the abyss you've created. With a final cry of anguish, I was thrown backward into the hallway, crashing against the peeling wallpaper. The air congealed, swiftly becoming thick with the scent of mold and decay. The faces of the damned circled me, suffocating my freedom. Face the truth. They shrieked, their forms distorting as they pressed closer, desperate to claim my fear. I closed my eyes, and for one fleeting moment, my memories slowed, settling around me like a trembling blanket. I could feel their pain, their rage, the searing accusations spiraling through the air. I knew then that I had to confront the truth, unmasking the darkness that lay not only in the past but within myself. Yet as I collected my thoughts, a sudden realization chilled me to my core. The shadows receded momentarily, revealing a door at the far end of the hallway. A door I had never noticed before, stood ajar with a flickering light spilling out, an invitation or a curse I could not discern. With every instinct fraying at the edges of my resolve, I had to choose. Would I confront the darkness that had consumed my past, risking everything in that room? Or would I retreat into the comforting veil of the known, forsaking the souls lost within these walls? The muffled calls of my sister echoed in the back of my mind. The pivotal moment loomed before me, heavy with consequence. I took a breath, a heartbeat of torment caught in my chest, and stepped forward, driven by a force deeper than fear. But just as I reached for the doorknob, it slammed shut, reverberating through the air like the final heartbeat of a dying star. Behind me, the shadows surged back, the indignant wails rising once more, blaring their demands for justice. You think you can hide? They bellowed. You'll face the reckoning. As panic enveloped me, a voice cried out through the haze, a familiar tune that twisted the knife of memory deeper. You left me behind, it whispered, intimate yet distant. I turned, breath hitching in my throat. And standing before me, eyes sorrowful and pleading, my sister emerged through the crowd. Her presence, threading illumination through the shadows, and yet, her expression fell as the darkness rose. Choose, she pleaded, before it takes us all. But before I could respond, the walls began to close in, a coming storm of despair. I felt myself being yanked into the maelstrom, pulled toward an inevitable truth that threatened to consume us all. And in that heart-stopping moment, the realization hit me like a freight train racing towards an uncertain fate. I had thought I was merely a prisoner in this world of shadows, but instead, I was a gatekeeper for the darkest truths waiting to be unveiled. Would I become their savior, or succumb to the very darkness I sought to escape? The ground trembled beneath me as I grasped the ever-fraying thread of hope, when suddenly, the sound of laughter echoed through the chaos, a sinister, joyous peal that sent a chill racing down my spine, and as I turned, my heart pounding, I saw the flickering eyes of something lurking just beyond the door's threshold, a presence waiting in the shadows, and I knew nothing could prepare me for the horror it would unveil next. The last memory broke apart like glass shattering on a cold floor. I was cast into a kaleidoscope of emotions, each shard a fragment of my failures. My heart races as I struggled to process the unfurling chaos. Laughter echoed, haunting and sharp, slicing through the tapestry of pain that had tethered my existence to the cemetery of my regrets. I stumbled through twisting corridors of wisps, voices converging into a storm of rage and sorrow. I am your reckoning. The disembodied voice thundered, ringing clear, soaked with malice. Your cowardice has brought you back. Do you think the shadows will forgive you? Forgive? I spat, feeling fury ignite within me. What have I to reproach myself for? Am not responsible for their pain, and yet, I could hear them each anguished whisper of lost souls claiming otherwise, and standing before me was a sight so terrifying it threatened the very fabric of my sanity. I caught sight of the shadow, a warped reflection of myself, slumped beneath the weight of every memory where I had abandoned those I loved. Its visage was a grotesque mimicry of my form, monstrous and fragmented. What are you? I shouted, rage underlying my voice as fear threatened to drown me. I am everything you are, it replied, a cacophony of voices layered within a choir of abandoned pasts erupting forth. Your darkness and your hesitations have fed me, empowered me. You cannot escape, you are now bound to the sins buried with them. Maybe I can't escape the past, I retorted, but I'll fight you. With each word, the shadows surged around me, forming whirlpools of discontent, lashing out with their fury. Grief clawed at my throat, each whisper tightening like a vice. You chose to forget. They hissed through the storm, and just as I thought I could stand firm, the memories of their pain flooded into air cries woven into the very essence of my being, and then, the flicker of reality came back to me, a disturbing seed of light buried deep in the mire. It wasn't merely about saving myself, but confronting the failures that had followed me relentlessly. I had to face the ghosts, not just recognize them, but acknowledge my place in their suffering. With renewed resolve, I set my stance, thoughts spiraling fast ere a frenzied descent into the madness that threatened to claim me if I wavered. I would not surrender to the darkness without a fight. This is my moment of reckoning, I declared, pushing against the shadows encroaching on the light. You will no longer dictate my fate. Their disembodied voices rose, a chorus rising with palpable rage, echoing violently through the air. You cannot alter what has been done. You are still the coward, the one who turned away, but I was done with apologies and half-measures. I marched forward into the swirling tempest of lost souls, where forms flickered in and out, yearning for recognition, for release. Every anguished face that met my gaze filled me with an urgency, compelling me to confront each moment I had denied. Forgive me, I shouted, each word a prayer that broke through the cacophony. I see you. I see each and every one of you. Their forms shimmered slightly, and in that instant, I flooded the air between us with the light from my heart that pierced through the thin veil of sadness. I refused to see before, but I am here now. I recognize your pain, your tears, let me carry your burden. I am ready. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in pain, their horrified disbelief echoing around me. You think that will suffice? You think this will free them? A voice roared through the chaos, deep and primal. Face it. You will never be free of your past. With eyes wide open, I pressed forward into the thrumming vortex of fury and memory, their anger, their despair, now radiating from me as I cradled their suffering. Using their grief as fuel, I summoned the last reserves of my strength, channeling their voices into my own. You are part of me, I cried into the abyss. But I will not be imprisoned. With every stitch of guilt, with every tear shed, I recognize the hurt. I will weave it into my present. I acknowledge my failures. I will not run. You will not drag me beneath once again. In that moment, I felt something shift within the shadows. Instead of flaring with anger, they shrunk back at the acknowledgement. Something pierced through the heavy veil of darkness, illuminating the edges of the void. A figure emerged, my sister's silhouette flickering like a candle against the wind. Embrace them, she whispered, her voice gentle yet powerful. Remember their love. The shadows shivered at her words, shrieks of loss raking through their tortured forms, and with that illuminating presence, I pulled the memories around me like a cloak. Each moment of joy, of laughter shared, mingled with regret. You were all so loved. You will never be forgotten. I roared, feeling the tendrils of shadow clawing at me, but now, instead of sinking deeper, I began to rise, drawing strength from within. The darkness burst around me, erupting in an explosion of resolution as the shadows twisted and dissipated, returning into the ethereal realm from whence they came. Their cries morphed into whispers as the light grew brighter, expanding outward, the warmth of love blossoming into life. We forgive you, the collective chorus echoed softly through the haze, and I felt the weight of my past heaviness lifting from my chest. But remember, we are part of you. You must carry us always. The air shimmered, and a door of blinding light materialized before me. Step through, my sister beckoned, her smile radiant even amid the remnants of the shadows that faded into the corrugated edge of existence. I won't forget you, I promised, stepping toward the glow, relinquishing the shadows at long last. You are the essence of my being, the pieces I need to carry forward. And then, a jarring stillness swept over me, swallowing the remnants of the shadows' cries. I took one final look back into the abyss, feeling the last tendrils of darkness retreat, only to hear a whisper, "You may have found the truth, but remember, the darkness lies waiting. It knows your name." As I stepped through the door, the echoes of their voices resonated within me, burdened yet filled with solace. But in my heart, I understood the truth of it all. While I had glimpsed light, darkness would always linger, forever woven into the fabric of my reality, and as I woke, the chill ran down my spine, the echoes of that eerie night still drumming like a heartbeat in my ears. The memory of shadow danced at the edges of my mind, leaving me with an inescapable truth, that I would forever walk the line between light and dark. For even as I stepped into the dawn of a new day, I whispered silently to myself, on the other side of every door, the darkness waits.